Good day, Metaphysical Mysteries listeners and viewers. Today we have with us Dr. Lisa Thompson. She is on the Big Island in Hawaii, and she is an author. She's a what we would call Galactic Ambassador, which you'll find out more about that as we go. And she is the creator of the Infinity Healing Method. Correct?
Yes,
Did I get it right? All
you got
right.
it right.
Awesome. Awesome. She's in communication with like 13, 14 different kinds of ET races. I know she said a couple of Bigfoot encounters. This is going to be fun. We're really going to enjoy talking with Lisa about all these different things. So I guess we'll start out and say, Lisa, you want to give us just a little intro so the folks know who you are, where you're from, what your background is?
Sure. So I am a lifelong experiencer contactee with ETs, and I like throughout my childhood was with them, but they didn't let me remember until I was 15. So my first conscious memory of being taken onto a craft was when I was 15. And the other aspect of like my childhood, how I grew up, is my mother and we were always into the esoteric metaphysical sciences. So she was an astrologer. All her friends were astrologers, psychics, tarot card readers. And when I was 13, we moved from Oklahoma to Washington State to attend a spiritual school of enlightenment, where then I was learning about higher consciousness, multidimensional reality, creating your reality, and things outside of our physical, normal 3D world that we're here in. And but even with all of that spiritual background, I was obsessed with animals growing up. And so my first career, I have a PhD in evolutionary biology, marine biology, zoology. But when I was in grad school, I was sharing with some of my friends my experiences with the ETs, my knowing that Sasquatch is real, dragons, fairies, merpeople, and they all thought I was crazy because, we were supposed to be these hardcore academics and they couldn't imagine things outside of this physical reality being real. So I hid who I was for most of my life. I moved from Washington State to the Big Island of Hawaii just over 5 years ago and started a night sky watch UFO tour business under my spiritual business. And so one of the aspects of the work that I do is teaching people how to communicate, to connect with their own galactic family and guides, and to understand what they're seeing in the night sky. So
Fantastic.
that's just a little
Yeah.
overview.
Well, to the listeners, I can tell you she's got a ton more than that, but
Yeah.
she's kind of getting you into it nice and easy, which is great. So, well, I'm going to jump into you with a hard question. I don't know, it's not really hard, but it's one I just saw the other day, and I've seen it many, many times. So we have folks in the I'm going to say religious community that believe these ETs are demons. That
Mm.
seems to be a bit of a tit for tat kind of situation. How do you answer something like that if you get a Catholic priest that tells you those are all demons, you're just being deluded and all that kind of stuff? How do you answer that?
Well, what I have come to understand is that I can only share things from my perspective and understanding, and people believe whatever they want to believe. So they can believe they're demons. From my perspective, they absolutely are not. And in fact, most of the extraterrestrial races are in higher dimensional realms, and a lot of them are actually closer to the angelic realm and feel more like that. So I know before we got on, we were talking about Arcturians, and that's one of my primary groups. And the Arcturians carry such a high vibration that they often are mistaken for angels, but they also carry that Christ Buddha consciousness. And so when I think people start really tapping in to there are things in these other realms, and they're all vibrating in different dimensions, frequencies. Some of them are going to have a lower vibration that might present a little more nefarious, and then others are going to be, again, more like angelic and guides.
Gotcha. Because we get called from time to time to do exorcisms, so to speak, where they've got a lower vibrational, and of course some, it depends on who I'm talking to. Some people want to hear it as, little demons with pitchforks and whatnot, that kind of thing. But when you understand the energy, that it's just a lower frequency, vibration, um, and it's like attached like. So if you're acting in a lower frequency, you're going to attract a lower frequency. If you're acting in a high
Yeah.
frequency, vice versa. So once we understand that, it's not so scary anymore. It's just a matter of fact of changing the frequencies to make things work a little better for people. So um, I'm curious about the Arcturians. It's a thing I've kind of studied myself off and on for some years, and love to hear your firsthand experiences. And if somebody wants to be introduced to an Arcturian, how do they go about doing that? And what's it going to feel like?
Well, so I first had my experience with my Arcturians October of 2018. I was taking a psychic intuition class, and on the first night of class, our teacher led us through a meditative journey to meet a spirit guide that would help us get extra information if we needed it. Now, I was already trained as a past life regression therapist and had done different kind of spirit guide journeys, met humans and animals, but this time was totally different, where I went to a different realm, and in front of me were the most beautiful blue-skinned beings. So they have, large bald heads, really skinny bodies, this beautiful blue skin, and they exuded the most pure love I have ever felt, more so than anything here on earth. And their message to me was, "You are one of us, we are one of you, we are family." And then they gave me a gift of a quartz crystal. And then we were to ask if they had a name that they wanted to be called. And there was a group of them, but there was one that was to the front, that was the spokesperson. And the communication was through telepathy. But the name that that one gave to me was Uluru, like Ayers Rock in Australia, Uluru.
Uh-huh.
And so I came out of that journey not knowing who they were, but there was a lady in class when I was describing what these beings looked like. She's like, "That sounds like either the Arcturians or the Blue Avians." And so I had to go home and Google what that was, because even though I had been an experiencer my whole life, I was still trying to pretend to be somewhat normal. And so when I Googled those two different groups, when I saw the images of the Arcturians, of how artistically they are portrayed, it's exactly what I had seen in this journey. And so since that time, over the last several years, I've come to understand that Uluru is actually me. That is my Arcturian self. And in that Arcturian realm, I'm a master healer. And so once I really realized, okay, that's me. And my light language came online in 2021 and 2022. I started channeling Arcturian Uluru myself. Um, that's when that healing energy started channeling through me. And then that opened the door for other groups who are also aspects of myself to start coming through. And ultimately, that created the Infinity Healing Method.
Yeah, I think for the listener and reviewers and so forth, the concept of parallel lives needs to be kind of explained because we think in a linear fashion, like a ruler yardstick kind of thing, start finish, past lives, future lives, that kind of thing, or none at all. I mean, a lot of people think that as well, and that's fine. But the concept of parallel lives all coming out at the very same time in different dimensional levels, all coming from the same higher self or whatever you would like to call it. I call it Uber soul, but everybody calls it something different. But it means the same thing. But we project out into all these different experiences. Is that kind of what you're talking about when you say this is my higher self from the Arcturian perspective?
It is, yeah. So at the quantum level, all timelines exist simultaneously. So there really is no past or future. Everything is in the now. And yeah, yes, most humans have a hard time wrapping their brains around that kind of concept because we are so dense here on Earth that we do seemingly experience linear time. But we do have the ability to make changes and jump to different timelines, which then has a whole different history with it. And so people are changing timelines without even knowing it, and even tapping into other realms without maybe realizing that they are.
Yeah, I think the dirty little secret, some of the government stuff is all that's been known for a long time. It's
Yes.
just, it's like, the age of disclosure, that little movie, kind of boring for those of us who do this all the time, but for somebody who's never heard it, it's kind of an awakening thing.
Right.
But Tommy and I talked to a person supposed to be in the know, and we get a lot of that because of the show. Uh, anyway, they said the main reason they haven't disclosed, like we would hope that they would, is that they were really concerned about the baby boomers and older, the greatest generation, the older baby boomers, younger baby boomers on forward, not so concerned about it because they'll be like, okay, so there's aliens, big deal. What's it got to do with me? I mean, can I still get a hot dog on the corner? Yeah, you can. So, but they were afraid, and they told us that particularly in the, not to pick anybody out, this is what we were relayed to, the Christian world and the Jewish world in that age group would be really freaked out and could destabilize the world economy and other things if they released all this. But it sounds like with President Trump and what's going on, he's on the precipice of releasing the secret that's not a secret anymore. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, and the president only has so much power, right? So he's
Exactly.
just a puppet.
Yeah.
Um, well, as far as what I have come to understand about like why disclosure hasn't happened on the mass scale that we've all been like hoping for or waiting for. Number one, they've been lying to us for over 8 decades. And so if they come out and be like, yeah, we've been lying to you, people will get upset with that. It's also to keep people in fear and control, I think, because even though they have done slow disclosure to an extent, with some of the congressional hearings and the whistleblowers and all that, it's still being spun. And this the Age of Disclosure movie, what I did not like about some of that movie is that it's still being perceived like we have to think of this as a military threat, right?
Right.
Because these are military guys, so they're thinking from that perspective of if we can't control it, we have to fear it or it's a threat. But my understanding is that if these ETs really wanted to take over, destroy us, do something harmful, they would have done so a long time ago. And, a lot of the ones coming here visiting, they are making themselves known more and more so because more people are ready for that. And I think over the next couple of years, with or without, Trump or whoever releasing documents, that more and more people will be seeing things and they're not going to be able to deny it the way that they have. And the other part of that is that if something, you guys probably have had people on or have heard the false flag idea of, there's going to be some extraterrestrial invasion, possibly, but it's not the ETs, it's the government doing that to keep people in fear and control.
Yeah. I mean, that's a relevant marketing method that's been used by the church, for an example, for 2000 plus years or more.
Yeah.
You have to have this in order to get this, in order to get this, and it's a chain of events that keeps you in fear and under thumb. Not that I'm not anti-church, but I'm just saying the methodology is very similar, uh,
Mhm.
and I get that. So, Tommy, you got a question on this?
Yeah, do you have any sense of why we seems like in the last couple of years there's much more in terms of sightings now by a variety of people all over the world? Any idea why it's happening right now?
Yeah, we're at a really interesting time in Earth's history in terms of more and more people are coming online, awakening,
Mhm.
remembering who we really are. People are more ready and open to it. And that really is what it takes. You have to have an expanded mind, an expanded consciousness to be able to see into these higher dimensional realms. And some of these ET groups are able to densify enough to physically be seen, but most of them are outside of our normal physical reality. And, here in Hawaii, we have so many sightings here on my island. And when I moved here to the island, what's interesting is some of my spiritual friends were telling me that the veil between dimensions was much thinner here. And so we're able, because it's a little more spiritually elevated, and so we can naturally see into some of those higher realms. And the ETs, they do want to be known. They want us to know that they're part of our family. We have up to 22 different ET races in our DNA, and they're cheering us on. They can't interfere against our free will, but more and more people are ready to accept that there are things off of this earth.
I agree with that. The idea of being able, I mean, now let me go back to Hawaii is supposed to have be one of the chakras, or maybe all seven islands that represent chakras, but we get what Maui and Kauai particularly talked about being that what the which chakra, the lower one, the red chakra.
Well, so actually, I think Maui is supposed to be like the heart chakra.
Oh, heart. Okay.
But in terms of the island chains, Big Island, we're the root chakra. Maui is the sacral chakra. Oahu's solar plexus. Kauai is crown chakra.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
See, I was there and didn't even know it. So I've been educated now. So that's good. If we wanted to, you said you talked about being a healer in the Arcturian sense. How do you transfer that to your physical sense, and how can you help somebody who needs a healing? And you're talking about physical healing, you're talking about mental or emotional healing. What kind of healing?
It's across all levels. Um, and you probably understand this. Healers don't heal people. They create the environment where the healing can occur.
There you go.
And so that's one thing that I've learned over the last 9 years is how to create the kind of energetic environment for a space for my clients to be in that energy where, and then with guidance, then their body can do its magical healing, because we all have the innate ability to have our own inner healing.
What do there's certain people that come into this incarnation and they've got stuff that's it's not going to be healed. But would you say that was their destiny for this experience then, if it's not healable?
Yes, I would say that. We come in with soul agreements of the lessons that we want to learn, the people that we're going to experience, whether we perceive it as good or bad, and certain ailments. I mean, I came in, I can tell you, my 53 years of earth life have not been easy. And I know that I chose that so that I could actually be a more compassionate, empathic healer now, because I had to go through all the really hard times, like some really, really challenging times, in order to understand what humans go through. Because I have not been human very often. I'm much more non-human in my other realms. And so I really needed that kind of direct experience so that I could hold space and actually be love.
Right. Now, I know you don't consider yourself like a psychic medium, but with the way you channel and can you connect to other people to kind of know what their background is, in the sense, do they have this Arcturian stuff, or are they in some other kind of realm, or we're in all of them anyway, into some respect, I suppose. So, but there has to be some that are more vibratorily influential for the third D, 3D people.
Yeah, so actually, the interesting thing about my Arcturians, why that group was so prevalent for me, is it's bleeding through from the time that is currently existing, which was during the time of the Orion Wars.
Okay.
And so, as in that time, and for the people who may not know the Orion Wars, Star Wars is based on real stuff that happened in our galaxy called the Orion Wars. And so during that time, was this Arcturian master healer called Uluru. And what's fascinating is that I was on another podcast, and the host of that, she remembers her full life as a Lyran during the time of the Orion Wars, and she wrote a book about it. And in the middle of the podcast, she's like, I know you. She's like, you're Arcturian. I said, yeah. She said, you're a healer. I said, yeah. She said, I wrote about you in my book. And so then we get off, she sends me her book, and I'm reading the part where she's writing about me, and it's very specific, not generic. It was Master Healer Arcturian Uluru, and what my role in the wars was. And so what's fascinating about that too is that there are quite a few that she wrote about in the book that we're all starting to come together again, and we all carry a similar energy vibration in this particular earth life, similar characteristics. And so because of where Earth is with its highly polarized reality, that's what was going on with those Orion Wars. And so those of us here on Earth are here to make the changes, to elevate the frequency so that the collective consciousness can shift into that higher vibrational realm. So we are all things, we are infinite beings, and some of those particular lives are going to bleed through because they're important for what we're here to do as Earth humans.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So the a lot of people talk about the Earth splitting, but it's a vibratory in nature, the splitting, and
Mhm.
there's an infinite number of Earths. That's
Yes.
really hard to get your head wrapped around.
Yeah.
So they use the Mandela effect to highlight some people. One, I saw, let's see, who was it? Bashar talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, about JFK in one line didn't get killed. He lived till 1985 instead of dying in 1963. But none of us remember that timeline because we've shifted over to what was going to be better for all of us, which was the 1963 thing for whatever reason. Now that's really difficult for our listeners to wrap their heads around. We have some pretty sophisticated listeners, but I'm saying for the new people that are just joining us are going, these people are wackadoodle. So, I guess my question is, how do you bring somebody who's, just Joe Sixpack at the end of the bar? He might be able to tell you what Noah's Ark is, but that's about the extent of it. How do you bring him forward into the at least the minimal understanding of this kind of a situation?
Well, again, we can only plant seeds, right?
Right.
So someone has to be open-minded enough to take in new information. And some people are never going to open their minds to anything new. So that's step one is be open-minded, be willing to have ideas, belief systems that you've held to be true to actually, oh, there's a different reality. There's a different experience. And for those people who really are skeptical, there is real science now that explains this. We know this from a scientific perspective. Quantum mechanics was really the breakthrough for us to have the science underline the woo-woo, right? And
Yep.
so that's part of what I have studied, not as the PhD level, but quantum mechanics as a layperson is the foundation for the work that I do.
Absolutely. Tommy?
Yeah, it's quite an evolution for people to try to wrap their heads around for sure. I just want to take you back because you talked about jumping parallel times, but people don't realize they're doing it. Can
Mhm.
you let the listener know what should they look for to kind of verify that? Because it might help them with their understanding.
Okay, well, so if we think of timelines as like stacks of paper, and every choice point that we're making, there is the choice we're making, and there's the choice that we're not making. Well, that choice we're not making is still existing as if we made that choice. We are just not conscious of that choice being made, like that JFK reference that
Mhm.
Perry shared. So all the things are existing. It's just where our focus is, where our mind is. And so um, you may not have evidence of it if it's just one little baby step choice. You may, if it's a massive timeline, like quantum jump that you're making, then you might like all of a sudden have your life completely, like what just happened, where people are leaving your life immediately, or you're experiencing things, you have a different realization. But usually with those timeline jumps, you're still not necessarily conscious that you made them unless there is some real big evidence of, something changing. And one example that I can give you of that in my own life, and this is not to be like have people feel sad or anything, but 2.5 years ago, I was in the middle of leading one of my galactic retreats, and in the middle of the retreat, my husband, who was the love of my life, he committed suicide completely out of the blue. And I, the next morning, after I had found him and all this stuff, the next morning I was talking to my higher dimensional team and to the trees, and I'm just like, did it really have to be that dramatic? Like, why? Why did this happen? And the message that I got very clearly was that in order for me to hold my frequency to that higher vibrational reality, to be on the timeline of being the Galactic Ambassador, he couldn't be in my energy anymore. Now, does that mean that he had to kill himself? No, but he also never would have imagined like divorcing me or anything else. And so that's an example, a pretty extreme example of that was a massive timeline shift that completely changed my world, but it also anchored me fully into being here and talking with you guys.
You know, that happened to me too. So I can completely understand that. Not the suicide part, but the exit. And was told this very same reason, because of the vibrational shifts. And people have to know that their spouses or, SOs, they may not be able to stay with you if you're elevating. It gets such a drift between them that there's going to be a separation, and it's already pre-planned to some extent that it's going to happen. You're going to have that split, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. And so I totally empathize with that 100%, what that's all about. And we do shift up to different, because that's where we're supposed to go.
Yeah. And I mean, the cool thing is that because I am tapped in to my intuition, and then I have so many friends that are psychic mediums, he has come through from the other side continuously over the last 2.5 years, giving me information, corroborating what I know and understand, and even the point of like, he's like, I couldn't help you in the physical realm to the degree that you needed the support. I can help you so much more from the other side. And he was kind of on the fence about my spiritual connection with the ETs. He had seen a UFO, so he believed that. He lived in a haunted house, so he believed in ghosts. But that spiritual connection, he was definitely on the fence with. And he didn't like when on our UFO tours, when I would share that aspect with the people. And so from the other side, he was like, okay, you know how I was on the fence? Everything that you know and understand, it's all real. Keep doing what you're doing.
Exactly. So what message do the Arcturians have for all of us?
Well, the main one, okay, so 5 years ago when I moved here to the island and I was able to fully like step into coming out of the proverbial closet, because I had to hide that ET side of myself for years. The first thing that they told me specifically, and this could be for the audience too, was that they needed me to stay out of anything polarized, stay out of politics, do not watch the news, do not put my attention on that, so that I could hold my vibration to that higher frequency. Now, what was interesting, so my husband, though, he was really into politics, very polarized, very much into watching the news. And so that energy was a push-pull kind of thing. The other thing is that they were sharing through me that because all of these timelines do exist simultaneously, what timeline do you want to be a part of? Do you want to still be in that lower vibrational, fear-based war, like all the hatred, all the icky stuff in lower vibrational earth? Or do you want to be part of new earth where People are compassionate and loving, and there's plenty for everyone. Abundance is all around. And whatever you're putting your focus on and your emotions towards, that is the reality that you're going to be a part of.
Yes, absolutely. I think RJ Spina talks about that as well, if you're familiar with RJ. Um,
No.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, there's so many out there that are really, really tuned in and have got that figured out. And so, as you take these tours, these UFO tours with people in Hawaii, what would they expect if they were to show up and go on one of your tours?
So I start the tour with educating people about, well, okay. So first of all, some of it is very 3D because we need the practical nitty-gritty information on what is the known predictable behavior of an airplane, of a helicopter, of a satellite, of a shooting star, because not everything is going to be a spacecraft, a UFO. So once they understand what that behavior is, then when we're using our Generation 3 military night vision goggles, well, number one, that amplifies how much more you can see in the night sky. And they can start seeing really weird, anomalous behavior. And we can call that a UFO, a UAP, because it is unidentified. I'm not saying that all of them are spacecraft and off-Earth spacecraft. Some of them are, though. We also have a lot of activity here in the islands of the transmedium craft, the ones that are coming in and out of the water. And so I have met people on all sides of the island that have seen that kind of activity. And then really it's depending on who's on the tour kind of decides what rabbit hole we're going down. But we do talk about some of the ancient megalithic structure sites around the world because I've had the opportunity to see some of these in person. I went to Peru for 2 weeks doing what I call my ancient alien tour of Peru. I went to Egypt for 2.5 weeks, same kind of thing. And one of the interesting things about um, the Egypt part is that one of the lives that I have been able to remember through regression hypnosis is my life during the time of the building of the pyramids. And I was not one of the humans, I was one of the ETs. And so I got to fully see what was going on and what my role was. I was a genetic engineer from Sirius. And so my job with my team was to help upgrade the human body to be able to hold more consciousness, run more energy. And then there were others of us, boots on the ground, teaching the humans how to do sound thought levitation of these megalithic structures. Because, and we do have the science knows that we have the ability to raise the vibration enough of even a 70-ton stone to make it light as a feather and to move it.
Did you ever notice the little boxes that they would carry to focus and increase that frequency, vibration? That is sometimes depicted, and
Yeah,
that's what that was, as my
yeah,
understanding.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So,
So I think we're getting to the point, which a lot of this would be probably top secret, I suppose, where we have the ability to do that already.
oh yeah,
And it was picked up from
Mhm.
either reverse engineered or given to the industrial military complex. So it's outside FOIA, so you can't get it. But anybody with any reasonable sense that's done any in-depth study, you got to come to the conclusion that duh, this stuff has absolutely been around for a long time, and so you
yeah,
can do some amazing things. So even with this ongoing war, the microwave interference units that they use for the drones to take them out. We didn't have that technology just a few years ago, and now we do. You could drop 75 drones out of the sky, just by
mhm,
taking out the GPS and with the electromagnetics and microwave frequencies and whatnot. It's fascinating stuff, really is. And but that being said, Tommy, you had a question, I know, so go ahead.
Yeah, it's just what we're discussing now is very been reported where the nuclear warhead sites when it's been close. Supposedly, there's been UFO sightings,
Yeah.
and they find the munitions aren't fireable, so that won't launch. I mean,
Yeah, well, one of my understandings about that is they can't go against our free will, but they are doing everything in their power to make sure that we don't destroy ourselves or destroy Earth. And so, yeah, they definitely have that ability. And everything we do here on Earth has a direct ripple effect out into our solar system, into our galaxy, through dimensions. And so they really do not want us destroying ourselves.
is it any particular group that's doing this?
Actually, it's a multitude of groups. So there are some different galactic federations that are made up of quite a few different races. And so, yeah, there's not just one group that's in charge of that, from my understanding.
The if somebody okay, so we've got, can you name off some of those 13, 14 that you deal with? Some of the
Mhm.
different ones, I'm sure you got grays, tall whites, blah, 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 but can you name some of those off?
Yeah, absolutely. So my little friend here in the back, the Zetas, they're one of my groups that I love working with, and in fact, I am part of the Zeta Human Hybrid Program. So I do have hybrid children out there in space somewhere. I also have a very strong connection with my Syrians, and that's part of the energy that I channel through for my Infinity Healing method. The mantids, the mantis, the like 10, 14 feet tall praying mantis bipedals, they are some of my absolute favorites to work with. They are master geneticists, master healers, some of the most ancient and wise in our universe. um, the Andromedans. So we have Andromeda constellation within our Milky Way, and then we have Andromeda galaxy. And there are beings that come from both places. And most of the Earth connection, though, is the constellation Andromeda, not galaxy. But I've had clients that have experienced meeting the galaxy ones too. The blue avians, the Lyrans, the Pleiadians, the Vegans. I also have some different aspects of higher dimensional reptilians, and that's one people have a lot of negative thoughts on reptilians and grays, and you cannot lump them all in one basket, just like you can't lump all humans in one basket. You have different races from different star systems and vibrating at different frequencies. So some are these pure, loving, amazing beings, and then others are polarized, like we are as Earth humans. So then you'll have individuals that might have, we would perceive it as a malevolent, nefarious agenda. And then you're going to have other individuals that are the opposite of that, just like with humans. So that's just a little sampling.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Tommy?
I think that's pretty cool. How did you make those connections? Like, how did you identify each group?
Yeah, that's a really great question that people they want to know, like how do I know who I'm connecting with? So when I started channeling the Arcturians, that I knew, and that energy, it was like the most familiar. And so I knew when that was coming through. But once I got used to running that energy, they were like, okay, it's time to bring in some of your other groups. And so, beginning of 2023, what they had me do was write down all names of ET groups. And I was like, okay, I'm writing these names down. And then what I did was I scheduled specific channeling sessions, and I taught this online. So I had participants. I did not know what was going to come through, but I knew on that day because I had slated, okay, today is the day of the Pleiadians. So because I consciously was like, okay, we're doing Pleiadians, then that group is what came through. So I created that reality. And we are that powerful. If someone wants to connect with a specific group, you absolutely have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I tell people it's kind of like the old radio station. You used to have to turn the dial and run up and down the frequencies to
Yeah.
find the radio station you wanted, and you're doing that with your brain, mind, whatever, consciousness. And that boggles the mind for most people. How the hell do you do that? How do you do that? And I think it's just practice. You get used to honing in on these different lines that you're going to run, and then they'll shoot out to that particular group or frequency, and whoever's on there, almost like a party line, like the old phones. You can shoot out and get somebody back. If they're
Yeah.
wanting to talk.
Well, and I share a quick story about the Pleiadian
Sure.
channeling session because this, I mean, some of this stuff it's kind of crazy, but it's real.
Oh
So
no, crazy. I can't imagine that. Not on our show. Yeah.
so the night before I was doing the Pleiadian session, I had been speaking about my book Connection to the Cosmos at our local bookstore an hour south of where I live. And on the way home, I'm just talking to my galactic team like I do all the time and like, hey guys, I really want to see signs that you're here with me. Please show me that you're here. And I get about half a block away from my house, and there's this really bright light above the tree line, above my neighbor's house. And so I acknowledge it. I'm like, I see you, stay there. I'm going to go home and park my car. So I park my car on my driveway, go down to the end of the driveway, look across, and it's still there. Now, this thing, it looked like a very big, bright, pulsing star. So I did get my constellation app out, got to make sure, it's not a star or a planet. Venus gets mistaken for a spacecraft all the time. Nothing was there. So then I start talking to it. And I'm like, okay, I know you're a spacecraft. Please do something for me that a spacecraft can do that a star can't do. And what it did was it completely dimmed out where I couldn't see it anymore. And then a few seconds later, it popped back on full brightness. And I got really excited. I was like, do it again, do it again. And it did it again. It dimmed out and then it popped back on. I'm like, do it again. Did it again 5 times because I asked 5 times. I am a trained scientist, so I need that validation, that confirmation. But as soon as I stopped asking, then it just stayed on. And then I had my phone, so I took pictures and video of it. And at some point, I really had to go in the house. So I always thank them for showing up when they do, because I want to be very grateful to them. They are a part of my family. And so we go in the house, and the video that I got is really incredible. It's like if you imagine a double donut, so like a circle with a circle around it. And so when you zoom in on the video, you can see it pulsing and spinning. It's like doing like a rotation kind of thing. So then the very next day, when I'm doing the channeling session, people are waking up, going to work about 5:30 in the morning, and they're noticing all these spaceship clouds all over the Big Island. Now, scientifically, they're called lenticular clouds, but we don't have the right atmospheric conditions to create lenticular clouds. But what's crazy with these clouds, they stayed in place, fully in place from 5:30 a.m. till 10:30 p.m. All the other normal clouds were blowing by, but these guys, they were stationary. And I had friends texting me like, oh my God, do you see these Pleiadian craft all over? And the one that was across the street from my house, that was also a Pleiadian craft. And so it's like, okay, they're physically showing up. Now, Pleiadians have a very strong connection with the Hawaiian Islands and actually all the Pacific Rim countries. All the native cultures, their origin stories are that they come directly from the Pleiadian star people. And so we do have a lot of that kind of activity, and they show themselves.
Wasn't King Kamehameha, wasn't he like 7'2" or something
Yes.
huge?
Yes. Massive.
Yeah, massive. I thought I saw a life size statue. Is it on the Big Island? I'm trying
It
to
is.
remember. Yeah,
It is.
I
Yeah.
thought so.
Up in
Just,
Kohala.
I
Yeah.
mean, unless you're Anunnaki, I don't know how you're going to be that big. So that looks like that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's huge. Yeah, and so fascinating. Yeah, the lenticular clouds. That's you might see that out in California and the western where you get the Rockies and all that kind of stuff. That's where those where that helps form that kind of stuff. But where you're at, not so much.
No, and we do have Mauna Kea, which is the actual tallest mountain in the world if you count it from its
Ocean
actual
floor.
base. But because they're not like I'm from Washington State where we have Mount Rainier, Mount St.
Right.
Helens, these nice pointy um, volcanoes. Ours are very round, very flat. Yeah, so a very different kind of mountain. And though clouds are an excellent way for spacecraft to hide because people are just like, oh, that's just a cloud. But
Exactly. So let's talk about your experience in the Northwest. So you said you'd had some Sasquatch interaction.
so,
A lot of people say they interact with UFO as well. So what's the
yeah. No, actually, my best friend in Washington, she and her husband, they live on 20 acres that is backing up to Capitol Forest. And Capitol Forest is a big squatchy area. And they actually their gate entrance has squatch on it. Like it's just total squatch property. One night we were inside of her teepee. She's got a traditional Native American teepee on the property. And we were inside there having a fire and doing some spiritual work. And we we hear rocks being thrown at the teepee. Like we weren't scared. And I was like, oh, okay, we have some visitors here. It was just to get our attention. We didn't go outside and look, but that was one that I knew. I'm like, okay, that is definitely there was nothing else that it could have been from my understanding. But I have also had one of my regression clients, she got to experience one of her lives and she was a Sasquatch. So we got to get information about that. And so she corroborated some of the information that I know and understand about how Sasquatch originates from planet Maldek, which was the planet in between Mars and Jupiter that's now the asteroid belt. And when the humans on that planet destroyed the planet, Squatch had to find a new home. They came here to Earth. They are interdimensional beings, so they can shift in and out of visible reality to us as humans. And that they hide because on their planet, there were humans and they were warring with each other. And so they saw humans like us being very like, with weapons and scary. And so that's part of why, when hunters are out there with their guns and, they really don't want to be visible for that. So what's interesting is I have another friend here on the island that he spent a week in Colorado just camping by himself. And because he was in a very zen, very higher vibrational state, one night around the campfire, a family of Squatches came and joined him at the fire, and they just sat there in peace. So really, they can interact with humans. It's just, they're going to interact in different ways depending on what the human intention is.
People, just to corroborate some of that, report when they are out there and they may see one, and then it kind of quasi disappears. They hear a little pop when it's
Mm,
going through a dimensional portal or moving into the other dimension. And if you have somebody also who has done any astral travel where and they will walk through somebody else, you'll hear the
yeah,
little pop as well, especially the person that got walked through. So it corroborates the same kind of, because we have the ability. I mean, long time we've known astral travel, and almost everybody does it at night when they're asleep and they don't even know it. They come out of body,
right.
and you can literally walk through walls, walk through people, walk through whatever. And it sounds as though, at least anecdotally, that when the squatches are moving into the different dimensions, that little pop noise, it's minor, but you can pick up on it. And people talk about that a lot. So it's fascinating, I think.
Yeah.
Makes sense in that sense. So that being said, so are Tommy and I Arcturian?
You're all things.
We're all things, aren't we, though?
You're all
Yes,
things.
exactly.
Now, I know we were talking earlier, and You definitely, Terry, have an Arcturian connection because you got to experience them
Yeah.
in one of your sessions that you were doing. And so um, we're all connected to all things. We're all connected to each other. So it's just a matter of, again, which one is maybe in parallel stack the closest, the bleed through, the important ones for us to connect with. And that's going to be different for different people.
Let's go back in time where people are always interested. I'm going to go back to that Jesus time, because what was he connected to? That's always a question I get asked. Was he
Um,
extraterrestrial in some respect? Well, yes, we
yeah,
all are. So you got
yeah.
a thought on that?
Actually, I heard something that I was like, oh, that resonates. Jesus has very Arcturian energy,
Mhm.
that pure love, compassion, the healing, holding that environment. And so I did hear a different channeler share that Jesus was actually it incarnated from the Arcturian realm. So that resonated true for me. And the Arcturians, again, they have that energy of the Christ Buddha consciousness.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Christos. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Jesus. For those that are into that, they'll know when they call him Master Sananda of the
Mm,
Sananda group, higher selves, and he's what we call an ascended master,
yeah.
which there's very few. There's some walking masters, but one that are created from on high. So people say Son of God. Well, yeah, absolutely, but their definition thereafter is where it gets a little foggy. Because we all are a little piece of God because we have that
Yes.
vast and infinite existence, and we're having all these parallel experiences all the time. Otherwise, we would be pretty bored. So
Yeah.
we have to
I
go
know.
have
Well,
some.
I people are like, well, why does it have to be so hard here? Why can't we just remember? And I'm like, oh no, because that we decided to come here. We came to Earth
Mhm.
School. It's PhD level
It is. It
in the
is.
realm.
I
Yeah.
tell everybody you get a real Cub Scout badge for coming here.
Yes. Yeah. And and so it's just a matter of like, okay, we came to have these different experiences. We might perceive them as good, we might perceive them as bad or negative, but it's all from a higher perspective. All of these experiences are just simply a mechanism of evolution. There really is no good or bad ultimately.
Now, I think we should also, I think we talked about this real early on, maybe even before we got on the show, but about the Octurians not necessarily being the physical beings that we can see with our eyes, kind of thing. They're more, well, I'll let you describe what they are. So you deal with them more.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if we think of us as humans as we are very dense, we're very physical, we feel very real, right? And if you imagine a fan, we are the fan with the blades. The fan is turned off. You can see each individual blade very clearly. Now you turn the fan on, that frequency vibration is spinning faster and faster and faster, becoming the blades then look almost invisible where you can see through them. So that is higher vibrational, higher frequency reality. And the higher it's vibrating, you don't see it at all. It's more just energy. And so you have these different ET groups, and we have the ability to do this ourselves to be in these different vibrational realms. And so some of them are interdimensional, where they can shift up and down that vibrational scale to densify to be seen. Like when we go within and do those journeys to communicate with them, they can densify sometimes enough that they give us an impression of what they look like. Sometimes they just appear as a color energy. And then some of them are closer to us like humans, like the Zetas. They can operate third, fourth, fifth dimensional reality. And so some of them really are more like us, where they're much more physical. So Arcturians generally are operating in a much, much higher vibrational realm where they don't appear physical at all. And we can't like actually visually see them.
The which of these are we going to see first in a like physical way? Do you?
So,
Hmm.
well, and you mentioned Bashar earlier. Bashar says probably the Pleiadians, and I would agree with that because they look like us. We are the closest to them genetically. They look like beautiful Scandinavian people. And so, because they look so much like a human, then people would be more accepting of that. Like, you can't just have the mantis, show up first because people, they don't even like what some animals and insects look like, right? They're like, ew, gross, that's ugly. And so it's going to start with the ones that look a little more like us, like the Pleiadians. And then there are people like me who have these hybrid children who they're a mixture of human and Zeta. So they look uh, somewhat human, some of them quite a bit human. And so the hybrids are likely to be one of the groups coming after the Pleiadians. And then slowly, maybe some of the other ones.
And people say, yeah, this still is, it's all just make believe. It's in somebody's head and whatnot. But I will say, I talked to I'll call it former governmental related remote viewer. Let's just say that. The question was posed, is there, what they called ETs and stuff? And the answer was like, well, I can't answer that for sure, but I can say, wouldn't it be interesting if you saw a 6 foot cockroach that was smarter than you were? And really, I think what he was describing was a mantis, is what it was. And I was dealing with a lady out of Florida, and I was on the phone, but I was doing a thing with her, and all of a sudden I could see this mantis standing behind her. I said, and she was very Catholic, very religious type person. She was trying to figure this all out. I said, so who's the mantis standing behind you? And it was interesting because it was an orange one. I've never seen an orange one before. It's the first
Yeah.
time I'd ever seen an orange one. I was like, and it's orange. And she goes, can you see that? And I said, yeah, I can see it. And she goes, nobody's ever been able to see him but me. I said, and she goes, that's a problem. And I said, do you not want it there? And she goes, no, I don't really want it there because she was a little scared at the time. And I said, okay. So I just did what I did and boom, it was gone because you
Mhm.
have the ability to move these things off. People don't
Yes.
realize that. But once you get it, you're able to move them off in a easy way or a more firm way, as the case may be, whatever's necessary
Right.
for your safety, because they're not supposed to interfere with someone. But
Exactly.
that was getting pretty close. She wasn't digging it.
Well, and I would be the opposite. Like, come
That,
on, guys.
she was seeing some reptilian stuff too, because she was getting like projected down deep earth. What it looked like deep earth, I said, it's not really. It's a dimension. You may think it's deep earth, but it's not. It's not. I guarantee you. So it was fascinating, and I haven't touched base with her in a long time, but I've been down this road before, and even there's so much we could talk about remote viewing and being able to see these things in a different space, even in a 3D space, but they're materialized. They're in certain facilities in different places. Pretty fascinating, really.
Yeah.
Once people get that skill set down, kind of the world's your oyster. You can go see whatever you want to see whenever you want to see it.
Right.
Until they're ready for that, they're just going to, you know, go to Walmart, go shopping, grocery shop, come home, cook hamburgers on a grill, drink a beer, watch the news, and go to sleep. That's all they're going to do.
Right. And well,
And
and there's no right or wrong in that. Some people,
no, that's an
that's just the
experience.
kind of experience they want to come and
Exactly.
yeah.
Tommy, you got any kind of a wrap up question?
Actually, I do. Lisa, like you said earlier, you come from a scientific background, which is kind of my foundational training as an engineer. And then we've done public safety forever. So I have a very critical thinking process, basically prove it kind of thing. So for you, when did you make the shift that you went, oh, I've seen enough or heard enough or experienced it, that it's proven itself. Like for our listeners that are sitting here going, this is all crap. Why am I listening to this right now?
So one thing I will say is my personal experiences will always outweigh what anyone external to me has to say about my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, that when I was 15 and was on the spacecraft and I got validation of that for myself, from myself, but then also from an external person who used to be very high military government, who knew about the different ET races. Um, that that initial experience and validation really planted the seed for them me starting to trust some of these really amazing experiences that I've had in my different spiritual practices over the years. And so really it's that kind of evidence and the connection that I've been able to do repeatedly. That is what gives me the evidence that it's real. And I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm just here to share information and plant seeds. And for some people, they're going to have an aha moment, and other people are going to be like, that chick's crazy. And I'm okay either way. And what I can say though, academics, it's very, very, very mafia-like. And I say this with love, but it's very close-minded. Like, what grant money gets given
Mm-hmm.
out, what papers get published, it's very, very in the box. And so you can have, you know, proof of these other things, but if they don't, the powers that be, if they don't want that information to be published, it's not going to be published, right?
Right.
And so we have plenty of science to back up these experiences that we're having. It's just not in the mainstream academics.
100%. One thing I don't think we got into too much yet, your healing method. Can you describe that to everybody a little bit?
Okay, so it's something that developed over the last several years where it was finally when I allowed that channeled um, energy to come through from the Arcturian, Syrian, and Mantis realms that really solidified what I call the Infinity Healing Method. And so it's a combination of regression, so deep relaxation, of light language, of that channeled energy from those realms, sound. Sound has an amazing ability for healing and to create that environment, and then some other stuff that I do with my clients. And every client is a little bit different in the way that a session needs to be run, depending on what's coming up for them. But what it does is it across the board, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, it clears out whatever is stuck, whatever traumas, whatever emotions are there. And we clear it across all timelines so that if they are ready, if their soul contract is written in the way where they allow that healing to happen, then the healing will happen. But like Terry mentioned earlier, like some people, they're gonna still recreate their old environment, which is creating the problem. And so really it's about creating a new environment where healing can happen.
Interesting. Terry?
Well, tell us about any of your projects that are going on and how people can get a hold of you, what your preferred method is. And I know you
Okay.
got some pretty cool stuff coming up, so everybody needs to hear about this.
Okay, thank you. So I do have a live online summit coming up that is called the Galactic Healing Accelerator. And I have, there are 13 of us that are speaking. And some of them are ET channelers, some of them are psychic mediums. They're going to be sharing information about how people can tap into their own abilities. And that conference, it's galactichealingaccelerator.com to register for free. And it's going to be again live over a 4-day period where there's going to be interaction. So you can actually ask questions to the speakers rather than it being a pre-recorded passive kind of thing. And then I also am teaching my first cohort of my Infinity Healing Method certification program, and that's going to start May 19th, and it's a 16-week program. And it's not just teaching my ETs coming through the people. I'm going to help people access their own specific healing modality and groups to work with, because we all have different ones that can come through in beautiful ways. So that's exciting. So infinityhealingmethod.com to get on the wait list and more information for that. And then I do actually have a free gift that I love to offer to audiences on shows like this. It's my Multidimensional Awakening Kit, which has 5 different meditative journeys to start clearing away things of like your judgment and really tapping into that self-love to connect to your higher dimensional guides and really choose what timeline you actually want to create for yourself. And that also comes with an Ascension workbook PDF. And that's at awakenactivatenow.com.
We will have all this on the website at themetaphysicalmysteries.com. So we're going to get that all downloaded so you guys can just go to that, and all of Lisa's material will be there, just in the format she wants it to be presented. We'll get it just exactly right. So as we wrap up here, Lisa, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to leave with the audience?
I just would love for everyone to just tune in to themselves, to their higher guidance, their higher wisdom. We all have the answers inside of us. We just need to know how to access those realms. And once we do, we truly are empowered and we can have a lot more fun here on Earth School.
Tommy, anything?
As soon as you said that, all I can picture is the Jimmy Buffett music while we're doing this work. That'd be kind of cool.
Tommy,
Lisa,
I think you need that little dude behind her. I think he'd be like a little brother to you.
that would work, man. I'm okay with that. Lisa, thank you for your time and your insights. You cover the areas that we haven't covered here before. And so that's always awesome when someone come in and share that kind of expertise and experiences. So thank you for your time and your consideration of helping these people.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you. I really appreciate the conversation.
Well, folks, hey, this was fun. Lisa, thank you so much. It was just awesome. And maybe we'll have you back sometime to talk about something cool. When that spaceship lands, you're gonna be on my phone list to call. So it'll be a good time. So for all of us here at the Metaphysical Mysteries, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.